Hey guys, what's going on? David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale for another episode of Breaking the Guard. Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Awesome as always. All good stuff.
Now you were saying you were just in San Diego?
Yeah, San Diego seminar weekend with the kids. I go to Turkey tomorrow for only 4 days, all the way over there for only 4 days.
That's rough.
Quick trip. I actually, honestly, man, I love it. I just love being on the plane because it's like quiet. I get to read or sleep or watch something. That's like it's me time, you know? I actually really like it.
You're comfortable on the plane as big as
Never.
you are?
Never.
Oh, I was going to say,
Never.
yeah, for me, it's super
You make
comfortable.
yourself comfortable, man. Like, you learn, like, the positions you can stay in. Like, I've been getting upgraded a lot recently. I probably won't get on this flight, but I've been, like,
Yeah.
I feel like 1 out of 3 flights I get upgraded to business, which is nice. But I can make myself comfortable no matter what, man. Like, I try not to focus too much on the fact that it sucks and just kind of focus on, like, oh, I can do whatever I want now and just relax. And I'm 6'3", man. Like, sometimes the problem is when you get someone that's not like my size or bigger next to me. That's when it sucks. If someone's smaller, it's not too bad. But it hurts after a while. You got to get up, walk around, stretch a bit. It's normal.
For me, it's like, I'm very broad-shouldered, so it's always creates a problem. Like, if there's another big person, it's like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is not going to work. And, it seems like seats keep losing the ability to recline.
Yeah, they're reclining less and less.
Like, I've been going to Reno now like once a month, and like there's JetBlue or I forget which airline. They don't have any business class or anything. So like the coach, like the recline's like this. It's like an insult. It's not even a recline. It's like
I think some of them don't incline at all anymore.
Yeah, it feels like
it's
might
spirit
as well.
that doesn't incline is what gets nothing. Yeah.
I was like, Jesus, come on. Fortunately, it's only an hour flight, so it's not too big a deal.
Yeah, for the short ones, I don't mind. Like the long ones, you got to get comfortable. Like I have like a herniated disc on my neck, so like sleeping on my right side is almost impossible. Like I mean, actually, be in a lot of pain if I do sleep on my right side. It's better that I don't. Yeah. I'm glad the pain wakes me up. So I have to be leaning on my left. It's the only way I can take a nap. But good stuff, man. What else is going on? What do we have this week? We had Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. Did you watch that or no?
No, I didn't.
I heard it was a lot of people saying that it was a fix. I have no idea why they would say that, but
no, I from what I read, they were saying that Tyron does what he does. He's done lately, which he just hangs back. He's too like gunshot. He doesn't pull the trigger. Yeah. The one time, I guess he did pull the trigger.
Dropped him, yeah.
Well, he didn't drop him, but he put him on the ropes.
Yeah.
It looked like the ropes kept him up, and he was able to come back. But the question is, like, why don't you just keep going, you know? Yeah. It's weird, but I was telling my girlfriend that it's like something broke mentally.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not sure what broke him, but, like, he's never been the same. He used to be a killer, man.
I remember. I cornered Jay Huron when he fought Tyron Woodley. Man, it was a quick, like, it's like fast knockout. So fast.
Yeah.
So fast, Dave. So explosive, you know?
No, yeah. He's got a monster right hand, you know?
Yeah. The thing is, like, these guys, when you climb a mountain, you see, you know, you get a 360 view of that mountain. It's not as beautiful as you thought it was going to be when you were climbing it. I think that's what happens. It's I don't know who said this, but it's so true. It's easier to get the title than it is to keep it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's 1,000%. I can, even though I've never been a UFC champion, I can know enough about competition and people to understand this. Like the pressure alone, right? The motivation's got to get harder because now you got all the comfort that you were striving for. So now all this money thrown at you and all this temptation. It's easy to get sidetracked. That's why a lot of fighters can't handle Vegas. They'll come stay for maybe 6 months, a year, and they leave. Like someone with good sense in their family or someone they're like the wife maybe just pulls them out. Like you can't be. Because Vegas just sucks people away from that, right? I'm not saying this is the case, but it's easy for you to lose motivation, get distracted, not have that same hunger, you know? Again, I'm not saying this is Tyron Woodley in any way, but like a lot of guys get knocked out, and then what happens is you see that something changes. They lose that kill instinct. They thought that they were invincible, and that's why they were killers. And once they realize they're not, like something happens, and they become a little hesitant. And I see this in a lot of guys. Something happens towards the last quarter of their career, maybe the last third of their career, where they lose that killer instinct that made them great, right? And they're watching out for their brain health. They're thinking of other things, you know. They're less reckless. And reckless is seen as irresponsible. I think there's something to be said about being reckless in a fight. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Like I always tell fighters, like first you fight with your mind, your brain, And then when that's not working, there's a time to fight with your heart, with your emotion. And sometimes that right there is lost to a lot of people because they don't have that anymore at a later stage of their career.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. You know, coming up, I was never really a technician. Like, it's funny because now I see myself more as a technician. But when I was competing, I was a heart guy. I was going to grind you out, you know? So I know people like, I was first exposed to this, you know, dichotomy with wrestling, because there were some guys who are very technical wrestlers, but they didn't have heart. If they weren't able to tech you or pin you, if you dragged them into the later rounds, they would break. And then, like, I know my brother and I, we would always catching up at the end, and we would end up overtaking people just by grinding them. You know, so like, it's just like what you're saying. If you don't have the combination of both the mindset and the heart, the guy with heart is going to beat you when the time, if given enough time. You know what I mean? Especially like when you're looking at UFC fights, which are pretty long. Especially if you're doing title fights, 25-minute round, you're inevitably going to get into heart, right? There's no way you're going to fight that long without using heart. You know, so like, to me, to be a champion, it's almost impossible not to have heart in there.
1,000%, man. And I wish there were an easy answer to this, but because I've given this a lot of thought. It's something I am fascinated by. But you can almost tell when someone still has it. So like when they're training, you can almost tell. Like, I've been around like fighting long enough. Like, you know, you get the kid that's coming up, and you just look at him and like, oh, he's got something there. And there are people just like, they're playing by the book, and there are people that have this like other motivation. It's like this huge drive behind them, right? And at some point, you can see something changes, and they lose that. Normally, my experience, jiu-jitsu and MMA, it's fame. It actually, that's the beginning of the end for a lot. Most of them, not all of them.
Yeah.
Very few of them can like have that amount of recognition and money and be unscathed by it and not be changed by it. You know, like, think about it. It takes like an enormous amount of maturity, responsibility, and even will not to be affected by power, money, fame. Like, how would you not? Like, you're human. Of course it's going to change who you are. And I think with a lot of people, it's the beginning of the end. And I see this when people get a little glimpse, and I've seen this so many times, man. They get a little glimpse of it, and they think they made it, and then they change. And that's the beginning of the end for them, because they changed. They were doing good, and then when they start getting that, like, they start to get like a feel for it, like, oh, I'm right there. I'm getting close to the crown. And that's when they fall, because they start like getting the taste of all the other perks that come along with it, and they don't have the discipline to stick to the recipe. You know, like, there's a winning recipe that people have up to a certain point in their career, and then they want to change it for some reason. Like, the classical example is like the guy who switches boxing coach for the title fight. Like, how many times have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
But there's just something to be said about that. Like, it's sort of true. Like, you got a winning recipe, and all of a sudden, like, oh, you got to change things. And I think that they're so hungry for that finish line. You know, it's almost like making an analogy, drawing an analogy with you know, jiu-jitsu. It's like when you see the back, and instead of one hook, seatbelt, second hook, they kind of jump on the rear naked and fall overboard. Like, every white belt makes this mistake like every day. They get so excited about being close to that finish line, right? I think that's that's a big one, man. I think people just can't handle show business in general. It's just too much too soon. Especially some of these kids are like, what, 22, 23?
Yeah.
You know, brain's not even fully developed at that age. You know this. Like, brain's like not fully mature up to like your mid-20s. So you get these guys that have like the world thrown at them when they're like 22, 23, like John Jones. Who else? Like, so many of them.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a lot, man. And if you don't have the right people around you to keep you in check, dude, you go off the rails very quickly.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor for sure. I think what you had touched on earlier also, just if they do lose in a bad way, like getting knocked out or something, some people get broken by that. And I think that is also very difficult to get by, especially once you've reached the top, because fighting with heart means you're sacrificing health, right? And potentially life. You know, so once you've already got to the top, I think some people might not be as incentivized to give up that health anymore, right? Because, like, man, I know how hard it is to get here and how much I can lose if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I've already got the respect that I wanted. Yeah. You know, so like, why do I need to keep putting myself out there? And usually I think as well that guys who are most Well, I think it's starting to change a little bit, but most of the champions from the older times were like 30s. You're kind of at that point where your athleticism is starting to fade a little bit.
Yeah.
You probably have a family going at this point. You know,
family's
so,
a big one.
yeah, and so like priorities are shifting. You have kids. It's not about you anymore. Now it's about the kids. Like, what good to your kids if you're brain dead? You know what I mean? Like, not much. You know, so I think that also plays a role in it. But I've seen guys like you said as well that are like stone cold killers. They suffer one hard loss and then they're like a shell of their former self.
Something changes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, man, like, I don't know how to get that back to you, you know?
And we made this point before, but like a lot of it is your social life. A lot of what's going on in your personal life. Like that's a big one. And I've seen that too. Like if that thing isn't in tune with what you're doing, right? If the machine isn't working together, if it's not adjusted, man, it's easy. It's easy with the motivation. Again, like you get to the top of the mountain and you've seen it. Like you have all that, right? I think it was Anthony Pettis, he said that once he was a champion, he preferred the moment right before he was a champion because he had all the same perks. He made pretty much the same money or something like that.
He had
but
the hunger.
Yeah, but like he didn't have the responsibilities of being a champion. Like get on a plane, like press conference, all the eyes are on you all the time. And I think when he lost the belt, that's when it was like this. When he lost the belt, that's when he was better. That's like that was the best moment of his career because he didn't have the pressure, not the spotlight wasn't on him all the time. He was making the same money. He still enjoyed life. He still had respect from friends, family, fans, whatever. But there was that pressure to be that guy all the time just wasn't there anymore. And I think it was like a better moment for him. Like which I can understand that. Like it makes a lot of sense.
No, I mean you could hear it from guys like GSP. Like if you hear him talk, like it's interesting. Like he is like an interesting character in that he's very paranoid, but he admits he's very scared and he's worried about losing. He's worried about this, and he has all this anxiety. But he managed to keep it together for so long, And what was interesting about his story was he did have that horrific loss, right? He got floored by Matt Serra, and then he was able to come back and win and then never lose again, right?
He never lost after that, huh?
No, but he got a lot of close calls.
I remember like Carlos Condit threw that. It was one of the most beautiful kicks I've ever seen. Like he rolled over that left hook.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was over. And on his way out of the roll, he threw a head kick.
Yeah.
That would have been one of the best knockouts in the history of the UFC. Not to mention it was GSP. And I remember the Matt Serra knockout too. I love Matt Serra, but I just think GSP is an overall better fighter. I think it's fair to say, Yeah. But that was, I mean, before that was BJ. He had a loss to BJ. That was it, right? Didn't have to be any losses, GSP. I don't think about it.
No. Like once
he lost one to BJ, didn't he? Was it 2-0? He fought BJ twice. I know that.
I think he beat him both times.
He beat him both times.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it. I thought
there was one that was closer.
Yes, I think that's what I had in mind. Some people thought BJ had won. I think it was a close fight.
Yeah, it was a closer fight. But then the second time he cleaned him up pretty well. And that was the thing that I think we talked about in the podcast, or maybe we didn't, that he actually had a coach that watched all the video of fighters and measured their reaction time. And they figured out, this guy said, I've watched all the guys. BJ Penn has the fastest reaction time. That's why you weren't landing your jabs. But he said BJ's recovery is not great.
Physically, cardio-wise.
Or just even off. Like he can react very quickly, but he doesn't recompose after the reaction. So he's like, the thing is, you have to do a lot of feints. So you have to get him to react. So he reacts quickly, but then when he's recovering, getting back into posture from the reaction, that's when you're going to get him. And they follow that plan, and they also realize he fatigues better. So the feints had like a multi-purpose strategy to it, which it ended up becoming a much easier fight for him. It was very interesting because this is a while back, but he just happened to run into this guy who had studied videos, and he was like counting the amount of frames it took from someone when an opponent threw a punch to seeing the amount of frames it took for that fighter.
The reflex.
I'm like, man, that's painstaking work. You know what I mean?
That's next level, man.
That's next level.
That's the I mean, at the Olympic level, at the professional level, if you have the funds to do it, like in jiu-jitsu, we're all too broke to do anything like that. But at the MMA level, if you're getting paid millions, like you should hire someone to do that. Like I believe that. I don't know if I told you this or not. I'm working with a university in Brazil, and we just started collecting data.
Oh, I think I read something about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is, because believe it or not, no one has ever thought about doing this. I'm like, and I've been saying it for like 10 years, like someone's gonna do it, someone's gonna do it. It's like, man, no one's gonna do it.
It's gonna be you, Raf.
No, it's not. I'm not. To be frank, I'm not gonna do. I'm kind of like telling them what to do. I'm sort of guiding, but like the most of the heavy lifting is gonna be done by them. But the idea is to find out what's actually happening. The inspiration was that movie Moneyball. Moneyball, right?
Yep.
And he revolutionized baseball because, like, wait a second, what you think, your fashion is irrelevant. Numbers are all that matter because it's tricky because people believe there's one thing going on. I remember for the longest time, berimbolo was the biggest fever. Berimbolo. Did it turn out to be like 5% of sweeps at the black belt level? But people were obsessing over the 5%, right? So, like, we want to do statistics on a number of things, like, and everything from, like, women's divisions, masters division, so we're going to go by age, gender, and belts. I think we're going to stick to belts. I think we're just going to do black belt. I think we're not going to do the other belts because it's going to be way too much work. Yeah. But it would be different too. Like if you really wanted to be like a thorough, you have to go by belt as well. But then just like now it's your work times 5. So you got to avoid that. So we're going to stick to black belt probably. And right now we're really putting a team of people together to analyze this footage. And there's a software. They developed a software in this university in Brazil. But basically, it's the painstaking work you're talking about. Like, Matt, you got to pause it, watch, write down what's going on the software. And at the end, the software just throws all those numbers into the chart. So now we know. And you'll be surprised, man. Like, the most common sweeps and takedowns, like, they've done a little bit of work already. And I have some of it I can show you. It varies big time between gender and age. It's not a small difference. It's always going to be 5%. No, it's like polar opposite.
Oh,
there are certain takedowns that are working consistently in certain divisions, and certain sweeps that are working consistently. And I'm thinking to myself, once I have all this, I almost want to be selfish and just do it for myself and myself. Why would I give this information away? This is gold.
Yeah.
Like once you have that, I'm like, this is really good information. Because the problem that I have an instructor, you have the same problem. Every instructor on the planet has the same problem, is that the canon of techniques is too wide. What do you teach?
Yeah.
You can't teach it all. So there are gyms that only teach one thing, and as a result, they become specialists in that thing, but then they have these huge holes in their game in other departments, right? So I've always tried to teach a little bit of everything, but as a result, I don't think my guys have anything that they're particularly great at. It's like they're like average at everything. Like, how do you solve that problem? For competition purposes, it makes sense to look at the numbers and go, in your division, this is your canon. This is the body, the arsenal of techniques that we're going to be focusing on, because statistically, this is what works most consistently.
Yeah. No, like you said, you are doing that. That would be great knowledge, especially if you wanted to hoard it to yourself. But if you're giving it to the world, that's just an amazing service.
I might sell it for $999. That much.
Or 3 easy payments of only.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? No, but I'm actually excited. I mean, this is going to be like 2-3 year process. This is not something that's going to happen quickly because we're talking about analyzing like 5,000 matches here. Yeah. It's got to be a big pool of data, otherwise it's not going to work. I mean, the bigger the better.
Is it going to be all gi, no gi?
That's the other one. See, we bumped into that problem as well. I want to do both. So that's a little, and it's going to change dramatically too.
Yeah, for sure.
There's not going to be a lot of Poncio Inagis in no-gi.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, man. We're like, oh, we need 20 volunteers. We might need more like 50. Like that's the kind of where we're stuck right now. It's like getting a group of people together. I could see
that it's a lot of, man, because if you're not only let's say you just do gi, but then I guess gi IBJJF rules is pretty standard. Yeah. No gi is where you can throw a monkey around because there's so many different rule sets. Each rule set is going to change the strategy of the athletes and the success rate.
So it's complicated because, like, for example, before IBJJF did not allow heel hooks no gi. Yeah. So it was like, so how do you rank the best submissions? The no gi ones would be, the heel hooks would have been such a small percentage because super fights represent what? 5% of, not even, more like 2% of tournaments of fights out there. Most of them are in the tournament format and they're following IBJJF rules. So now that they've legalized heel hooks, it makes it more, now it's closer to what, like, let's say ADCC or super fights will be. So it's going to be a lot closer. So I don't think there'll be a big difference there. But for example, if you throw like a submission only tournament in there, now you have problems.
Yeah, there's no scoring. So.
There's no scoring. Like and then people allow themselves to have their guards pass or swept. They don't care. So is that going to count in the ratio? It's very difficult. When we bumped into this problem early on, and I'm like, I might have to exclude submission-only tournaments. It's not because I'm like not just considering them. It's submissions you can count, I guess, but then you have the overtime, and that creates another problem. Because the overtime, like, why are you surprised that the rear naked choke ratio is through the roof when the guy's starting with a seatbelt and 2 hooks?
Yeah.
It shouldn't surprise anyone, right?
Yeah. Personally, based off what you're saying, like I would have probably just said, let's just do IBJJF, gi no gi. That way it's like one rule set and you get a pretty good idea of, how that works.
And we thought about that too, but this is the thing. Though IBJJF and the tournaments that are following IBJJF rules are about like at least, I mean, Naga is similar, like the other tournaments out there. They follow a similar system, right? But let's say I think IBJJF tournaments worldwide, probably 90% of events in the jiu-jitsu world. Right? I think that's fair to say. But if you exclude these other tournaments, you're going to say, oh, that's why, because you're excluding all this, that's why you're not getting those numbers in. But it's such a small pool of data, and it's at odds with the majority. It's going to be hard to find. I mean, you could add a submissions only, but you couldn't add positioning because you'd never be able to insert that into the pool of data.
That's what I mean. The rule set for submission only is too different.
Yeah.
To be able to add it and make sense in this current pool of data.
2 different languages.
I would think, like, especially if we're just going to start out with this thing, just do IBJJF stuff, and then once that data is cemented, then you know what? Like, what they call them in games? DLCs, right? Like added content.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do like sub-onlys, or I'll do something else, like maybe Grappler's Quest or Nagas or whatever other tournament sets. But I would start off with that because you said that's the biggest sample size. It's regulated well, so there's consistency. Yeah. That's the other thing. Sometimes like Nagas or Grappler's Quest, refs are not that good and they're calling things differently. So like I've seen people giving knee and belly points sometimes. Like, wait, there is no knee and belly points here.
Yeah.
But like,
no, you're right. Like we might have to stick to only IBJJF just for, just to make our lives, because otherwise it's gonna get too conflicted. But anyway, that's like a long-term project, and the idea is to publish the information at the end.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That would be pretty awesome. That's like you said, that's a gold mine. That's data that like you would really like be cherishing. That's why when I heard the GSP story, I'm like, damn, that's amazing. That's like high-level preparation, right? And I guess most people don't have that ability to do that.
And I'll tell you, and this is a piece of like, advice anyone wants to start a business. They want to be in martial arts world, right? Like, I don't want to have a 9 to 5. I want to make some money from MMA or jiu-jitsu. And everyone does the same things. They either try to fight or they open a gym.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, man, like, you got to think outside the box. Like, if someone got really good at this and they had a software and they had like the technology to do it and know how to do it, and they specialize in that, and you walked up to like a Jorge Masvidal or a, whoever, like top player, and like, hey man, this is how much I want a month and I'm going to do all this for you. Dude, if I were making $1 million, $2 million a fight and someone offered me that information for my next opponent, I'd hire that person in a heartbeat.
For sure.
And I don't make them like do like some kind of like a non-compete, like you only work for me. I'm serious. I wouldn't even want to work for the competition. I'm like, I'm going to put you on a salary, but you only work for me and my guys.
Yeah.
So we were starting the MMA team. Like I had all these ideas. Like I wanted to do all that. I'm like, how can we, like, because that's how they do it at football. They do it at the NBA level. MMA is very amateurish still.
Yeah. And
I think it has to do with the culture. And we talked about this before, where like the culture of MMA is very resistant to change because it is dominated by like that alpha male / I want to say like jock / knucklehead mentality. Like it's hard to, like you try to have conversation with a lot of these guys and they don't want to listen. Like they're very closed-minded when it comes to new information. That's why I'm convinced that MMA evolves slower than jiu-jitsu. Because jiu-jitsu, they are very open to new techniques and new approaches. Everyone's like, oh, new is always good. MMA guys, they tend to be I think that they're more resistant towards change. Like as a good example here, when I teach seminars, I have never had more than like 10, 15 people in an MMA seminar. And I've been to some big gyms. Yeah. I've been in big gyms where people like they'd rather hit the bag than come to my seminar. Because they're like, I learned something. I don't need that stuff.
I've seen that too.
You know what I'm talking about? It's the culture. It's completely different. They're very resistant towards like change and like new ideas because like, a lot of times that happens to be the athletic guy. He gets away with a lot. So he thinks he's winning, therefore my way is better. And he doesn't see that you're winning because you're athletic. But if you actually use your brains and you actually did things the right way, you do things even better. Whereas because football is owned by an individual, like so let's say the football team is owned by you can put the hammer down and go like, motherfucker, I'm paying your salary. You're gonna do this to X, Y, and Z. And shut up, right? And everyone, but in MMA, the fighter runs the show.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest weakness in MMA is the fact that the fighter runs the show, not the coaches don't run the camp. I've seen it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You don't run the camp. It's the fighter who runs the camp. And if you try to tell the fighter what to do, he gets angry. Like, not all of them.
No.
But the successful ones, listen, like Khabib, like my favorite example, like he has a camp where, like, I guarantee you his dad told him what to do.
Yeah. No.
He didn't question that.
And I think that's also part of his faith that made that easier. You know what I mean? And he's another guy, like, talking about being a champ, undefeated for that long. It's a hell of a mental feat to pull that off.
Absolutely.
But getting back to your point, we had talked about this way back, I think, but the model of coaching, the relationship between the coach, the athlete, and the promotion is completely upside down for MMA, right? Like, if you look at other sports like NFL and whatnot, you know, the coach is on top of the athlete, which is on top of the promotion, right?
Yep.
Whereas in MMA, it's the promotion's at the top of the ladder, then there's the athlete, and then there's the coach, right? So it's like completely upside down. And as a result, the guy who has the most experience, the most information is the coach, who is treated like, you know,
he's the bottom of the pyramid.
He's the bottom of the pyramid. That doesn't make any sense. He's the guy with all the insight.
It's less efficient too.
Yeah.
I as a gym owner, too, you know what I'm talking about. We bump into this problem in the gym as well. You have the hierarchy. I call them overlapping hierarchies. Like we have the traditional hierarchy that is the one we see in collegiate wrestling and professional teams, where the coach is the boss. If you don't like him, you know, there's the door.
Yeah.
In the gym, they're customers.
Yeah.
So they're the boss. So you have this, like, the coach is the boss, but I'm a customer. So who's the real boss?
Yeah.
Like, it's complicated, man. It's not. It sounds like a simple problem, but like, money throws a monkey wrench in all of this when the money is in the hands of the students, or in this case, the fighter.
Yeah.
It flips the hierarchy.
It's trickier to manage, especially if you're starting off and you don't have that capital, and then you're conceding to like demands that you don't want to. Then you're putting yourself in a really bad spot. Like, fortunately, like my gym and my brother, we've been in it for like 20 years this year. So we're in a position where we fire students sometimes, like if they're incompatible with the program, or the values are not aligned. It's nothing personal. It's just, it's not going to work. We're both going to be unhappy. And it's interesting when that happens, because then the student wants to come back in, but it's just not going to work. You know, the values are off, you know. And the way I see it, if the coach is not, if the student starts telling the coach what to do, that's already, to me, the relationship has been broken, right? Because you no longer trust my ability to instruct you, right? Which means you think you know better than me. At that point, I can't coach you, right? At the moment that someone thinks they're better than you, you can't coach them, you know? And it's just going to create a lot of friction. I've seen this, like I said, I fired like UFC fighters, like, because it's just like, it's not working anymore.
It doesn't work. And it's to the fighter's detriment. That's like when you try to explain to these guys, and they can't understand, because they think that what they want is what's best for them.
Yeah.
Because if I want this, I want you to hold pads for me like this, for example. They think that's what's best for them, because that's what they want. But sometimes, like, what's best for them is the opposite of what they want, you know? And then I think this has come up before as well, but coaches in Vegas is very common. They hold pads for free.
Yeah.
They hold pads for free. That's Dave, it's a lot of work. So you got a guy who's making millions of dollars, and you're holding pads for him, and you don't charge him at all. You know why they do that? So they get that camera time, they get the interview. Sure. So you get guys that like never done anything, right? And they don't know anything in sport, but they're willing to work for free to get that notoriety. Now the wife loves that, because she saves money, right? The fighter's like, okay, whatever, you know, like, but that's hurting him, because there's some amazing boxing coaches in Vegas, but they're not going to work for less than $150 an hour.
Yeah.
And that's like lowballing it. Like, some of these coaches are going to charge you a lot more.
For sure.
But if you're making millions, man, that little extra 1% you can get from that coach is a difference between winning and losing a 5-round fight.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of these guys themselves, they're not willing to make that extra investment. So just hold pads with the guy that holds pads. You know, they'll do it for free. Very common.
And for the record, like, I don't hold pads for anybody. Shoulders, man, it just hurts so bad, dude.
Holding pads? I've done this. I've very few times in my life. I can feel like over time that would mess you up. I guess you gotta have to, like, learn how to like position your
Oh,
arms.
sure, you got to feed into it. And
so it's not doing that to you because, and even so, there's a lot of impact on the joints. Dude, holding pads, being a coach is a lot harder than people think.
Oh man, it's brutal. Like
how many times I get into sauna with those guys?
Yeah,
believe that?
I know. Like I used to hold a lot of pads for my guys, and I would do what I call like MMA pads, which is I would essentially be doing a sparring match, but I'm holding pads. Yeah. So I would shoot in, they'd sprawl, I'd take them down, they had to walk up to their feet. And it's like one-sided beating, pretty much. You know? Except they're hitting my pads most of the time rather than my face. But like it's hard doing that. You know, it takes a lot of energy out of you. And especially if you got a heavyweight that can drop, man, even if you're doing everything right, pads extended, you're taking here, shoulder is still moving in a little bit, you know? And you know, like if you hold a bad pad like this, then you essentially Americana'd yourself in midair, you know, which is like no good either. So yeah, like I see sometimes like guys holding for like, I feel bad for the guy holding pads for Francis Ngannou, man. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That guy can crack.
That's gonna be brutal.
I heard, I think it was like a former boxing coach. He said that he held pads for Ray Seffel once. He was telling me how like Ray could crack too, man.
I bet he can.
Yeah. I mean, he's built alone. He's like just looking like built for punchy stuff, you know.
Yeah. I'm like, man, you need that.
You see that fight between is it him and Mark Hunt? Yeah, him and Mark Hunt. K1.
Two guys that can freaking.
It's like you have lost some brain cells there. There's no way you get punched in the head that hard and there are no consequences.
Man, Hunt got a chin on him, you know.
Like Hunt can take a punch.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel awful saying this because it sounds like I'm talking shit. I hope it doesn't sound that way, but I don't think he's a very technical guy. Like Mark Hunt, like he's not. He just hits super hard and he can take a beating.
Yeah.
Like I'm not thinking if he let me punch him in the face like a 2-3 as hard as I could, I wouldn't drop him. And he doesn't have to. He could probably drop me with a jab. Like it sucks, but it's just the reality of the conversation. And I think it's part of it has to do with like the density of your the jaw bones and all that, and like a lot of it might be like your neurologically there might be something where some people are maybe predisposed to take a punch than others. Like for example, like I'll give up Vanderlei. Vanderlei can take a beating, and he's like, oh, he's gonna be all messed up when he's like older. He's older now. You ever listen to him? He's fine. He sounds fine.
Yeah,
but it doesn't sound like. And I've seen other guys that have taken less beatings than him that don't sound fine. I think there might be something where some people just like recover from neurological damage more than others. I don't know anything about this. Maybe your wife or your girl Jamie knows, but I don't think it's the same.
No, there's definitely I think a genetic component to that as well. Unfortunately, right, where some people just can't take a hit as well. And you see, like in boxing, we don't see, like in MMA, you can see people who have relatively weak chins get up to higher levels, you know, because you can evade. Yeah. You know, you can avoid getting hit that much.
You can good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu, you're good.
And you won't get that chin tested too often. Whereas in boxing, if you have a weak chin, you're not getting out of the amateur leagues pretty much, right? Like, because you're going to be chin checked and you're going to find out. And if you don't have a good chin, you're not going to make it to the upper echelon. Whereas in MMA, you could get to the upper echelon and have a weak chin, you know? Yeah. And that's why I think for MMA, though, there's a bigger factor in learning head movement. Because, like, there are certain fighters that I've known that they had bad chins, but they had excellent head movement. Yeah. So they were able to avoid getting hit a lot. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if you have a weak chin and you're a slugger, you're not going to last, you know?
No. Yeah. Especially in the heavier divisions, even more so. Yeah. It's going to be more impact at the end.
For sure.
I've made this case for a long time, but MMA has been so influenced by boxing and Muay Thai primarily. And that I think that because, like, you know, boxing best hands, Muay Thai best elbows, knees, whatever. So people immediately assumed that those two were not just at the best, but the only martial arts that MMA should be absorbing from as far as striking goes, right? And I always thought, because if you look at a boxing ring, it's a square, right? It's a square. So, and it's relatively small compared to the UFC. Yeah. It's like half the size. Yeah. Meaning there's going to be a lot less room for footwork and a lot more place for catching and blocking, right? So footwork and head movement, not that they're not important, they become less important because most of your defense is going to be with your hands up. Yeah. Whereas when you open up the space and you make it an octagon / a circle, mobility is going to become a bigger factor. So you see guys, and it took forever to MMA to do this, like forever. But like guys start switching their stances. They have like a wider stance now, horse stance. Their hands are down a lot of times. right? They're not keeping their hands up high the whole time because it doesn't make it almost like slows you down to punch from here too. Your punches are fastest from down here.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you gotta keep your hands all the way high where you're supposed to, your punches are a lot slower, but this is faster. But it hurts your defense as far as like catching punches. But if you got the right footwork and the right head movement, well, that's your first line of defense there, not your hands up. The hands up, the last line of defense.
Sure.
So you've seen like a lot of guys from, it's a style that people made fun of forever. It was like point karate. That doesn't work because there's not a lot of knockout and impact. But when it comes to their angles, their footwork, and their timing, that's where they excel at. I actually think it's a great style for MMA. Once you absorb like the hard impact, he's going to need that KO power. You're going to get that from boxing and Muay Thai. But as far as their footwork and timing, dude, I think it's the best for MMA because that's all it's all about. It's like hit and run, hit and run, hit and run. And MMA is like that, man. I never liked sequences, like when boxing coaches, for MMA especially, like 6-7 punch sequences. You agree, right? It's like
100%. It's like, garbage.
Yeah. I always go 2-3, 2-3. Maybe 1, 2, 3. Even 4 is too much if you ask me.
Yeah, my brother, he has this saying. He's like, even a blind guy, if you hit him once, he's gonna move, right? So like, how are you gonna throw like 6 punches?
He's just gonna stand there.
I've seen people who feed pads like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Dude,
I'm like, man,
12 punch combos, yeah.
Like I've never seen that happen in a real fight where two people stood in front of each other and just traded blows. That's a slugfest, right? Like that's gonna happen. Like to me, realistic combos for MMA, 2-3 hit punches.
Yeah.
You know? And moving out, right? Because that's the other thing. If you're throwing that many punches, takedown's gonna happen pretty soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you throw them, but you become vulnerable to takedowns.
Yeah.
So and the thing is, like some coaches, and this happens in jiu-jitsu, so I'm not like shitting on striking coaches, but they're so orthodox, they're unable to see, like, for example, like jiu-jitsu guys, they'll be like, oh, no, do this, do it this way. And then wrestlers went along, no, I'll just beat you from half guard. I don't want mount.
Yeah.
Right? And then wrestlers, no, you got mount. Mount is better than half guard. I'm like, yeah, if you're going against a guy who's clueless. But if you go against a guy who's known fighting, like, half guard is better for ground and pound, which I agree. I think it is.
Yep.
And then, like, wrestlers want to change it. Like, there's so much resistance from jiu-jitsu guys in that regard. A lot of striking coaches, they have that, like the Thai guy especially, because the Thai is almost like, it's very orthodox in Thailand.
Yeah.
The way they do things, it's like borderline religious. And it's just like, it's almost like you have like a way of doing things, of training, and everything is done in a certain way, and there's not a lot of flexibility. They don't allow for a lot. That's like, this is what my striking coaches would tell me, like the Dutch, they absorbed what was best from every striking martial art, and they created Dutch boxing, right? Which is a little more eclectic, like it is more versatile. You're gonna find like they incorporate from many different martial arts. But like for example, the Thai guys, they stand very tall.
Yeah.
Right?
Square,
which is
too.
It's square, tall, and they take hits. Like in Thailand, it's almost like, oh yeah, hit me. Like, no man, no hitting. Like, no, never hit me. There's not a lot of evading. There's more like check, moving forward. Like and boxing is not so different. They have that, and I think a lot of that, Dave, is a reflex of the ring. The ring makes, it's almost like fighting in a phone booth. Like if there's no way you can fight with range, but once you put them in the octagon, man, like why would you not use that range to your favor? And as I don't like to use him as an example because I'm not a big fan, but like McGregor does it. I mean, was doing it for forever. Like that was the first 3/4 of his career. That's how he was killing people.
Yeah, this blitz.
It was distance.
Yeah. It
was distance. It was timing. It was angles, and he had a horse stance the whole time.
Yeah. No, and like this UFC this past weekend, like what's his name? Giga. I think he's like Georgian or whatnot. He's a striker, and he knocked out Edson Barboza. It was a striking battle. Very good fight. But I think he has a karate background because he was going in and out, controlling range, and he was able to outstrike Barboza, which is a crazy feat. And he was faster than Barboza, which is also crazy. Particularly with his feet. He's like, I'm just whipping out kicks. And he was able to control distance really well. Yeah. So he's, again, the karate guys do have an advantage in that, and it's a good philosophy. You get in, you blitz, you score your strike, you get the hell out of there before anything happens to you.
Get out of dodge.
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of striking coaches holding pads in a way that gets them to move after they finish their sequence, which means like every sequence finishes with a step left, right, or back. Yeah. You got to. But like it's so common, and this is ingrained in your DNA after a while because you've been holding, hitting pads their whole life like that. But you finish the combination, you're still standing right in front of the guy. Now that's something. I think it's more common in boxing and Thai boxing maybe, but I think it's a terrible idea to make. You can't catch punches with those small gloves. That's the other part of it.
Yes, yeah.
Those gloves are too small to catch. So much harder to catch punches with little gloves.
That's why I remember like earlier UFCs, like Tito Ortiz when he was getting beat by Chuck Liddell.
Yeah.
He kept doing the shell. I'm like, this shell doesn't work in MMA.
It doesn't work in MMA.
It's
You're
too
right.
many holes.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have like giant gloves that block you. Like those gloves have like a lot of gap.
Yeah.
This is like 1-2 punches tops.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got to get the hell out of there. You know, so I agree with you. Like in our striking coach Eric Castaño was a Tigre, he was a kickboxing world champion. He was really good with that as far as like always having you move. Like you never were allowed to like throw a combination and stay there. Like you have to shift, angle. There's a value to being able to do like the 30 punch combo because you're building some
conditioning,
memory, hand-eye coordination, right? Because
yeah.
usually they're using a lot of slips. That's good, but like you said, it's a bad pattern if you're just staying put or you're thinking you can throw that many punches in the sequence.
The way I compare that is like the way like a lot of jiu-jitsu guys drill, where they'll do a move with like a dead body in front of them.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's some benefit. You're remembering the move. You're burning some calories, you know, like maybe a little cardio here and there. But it's not going to make your passing better when you're like leaning on someone's knees and you're shuffling your feet right and left.
Yeah,
it's like everyone's favorite. Like, I'm getting good at guard passing. Like, no, you're not. You're working out. It's like jogging.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of the stuff that, I mean, in boxing have that too, like the speed back. I don't think it makes you a better boxer. But it helps with hand-eye coordination, conditioning. But it's not like you're never going to throw your hands that way.
Yeah. And like you said, like you just tweak it up just a little bit. Do the same type of thing, but like 2-3 punch. Yeah. Like you said, 4 punches like maximum.
And that's level. If you rock the guy.
Yeah.
4 punches when you hurt him. And you can go 4, 5, 6. But like if you're exchanging, and man, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 out. Like never in there for too long, man. You know, but again, neither of us are. I mean, probably some striking coach right now listening to us thinking that we're full of shit, but we're both grapplers. But you know, I think we got a point here, man. Like I really do. I'm surprised that more striking coaches haven't made those adjustments. Just like some grapplers never make those adjustments. Like just some wrestlers never make that adjustment. Well, how many wrestlers I know that as soon as they learn how to get out of a triangle, they're like, I'm good. I don't need this jiu-jitsu stuff. I'm like, that's great that you can posture out of a triangle. Congratulations.
Yeah.
There's like 50 other things you got to learn just from the same position before you can say that I got it. You know, but it's not, again, it's an MMA thing. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult culture to deal with.
I like the term they used before. We talked about it a while back. As far as the transitions in MMA, you call like the in-betweens, I think, right? Where that's where I feel like you get the most value out of MMA. Because most people train, like I call them, like, I guess it's like split personalities, where like there's a kickboxer, there's a wrestler, and then there's a jiu-jitsu guy that all live in the same body. But only one of them function at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? So like we're standing up, we're in striking mode. And then we clinch, okay, now we're wrestling. But if you're a true mixed martial artist, you're always just one. You're just fighting. But most people don't do that because they train at a camp like, oh, today's kickboxing day. Okay, everybody kickboxing gloves. Yeah. Now you're training with a different thing. You're not going to be fighting with a kickboxing glove. Yeah. And, you know, you can't do takedowns with kickboxing gloves. You know, it just doesn't work.
And that leads back to the cultural problem I was telling you about. For example, like you couldn't go to most MMA gyms and have them spar with small gloves because someone's going to get hurt. And the reason they're going to get hurt is that I mean, you have to develop a sort of kind of camaraderie and trust inside a gym that I know that if you catch me in a heel hook, you're not going to blow my knee because you care about me.
The trust.
And I trust, like, I've been to so many MMA gyms, like, I honestly feel that half the times I was sparring, people would have hurt me if they could. Like, that's very common. Like, guys will, if they can, they will. Yeah. Because the camaraderie is not the same. Like, it's very, very few gyms actually have that sort of brotherhood because it's such a transient population, too.
Sure.
You get new guys coming in every week. You're sparring with people you don't even know. And you spar with them twice and you never see them again. Or you might be fighting them 6 months from now. Right? Like, I mean, to me, that's strange. Like, people used to give, like, oh, the jiu-jitsu is too political. And I've been one of those my whole life. Like, I've leaned the other way now. I think that actually having a solid, consistent team is to the benefit of the athlete himself. Absolutely. As you develop that camaraderie, if you're bouncing around all the time, it's very difficult to develop that.
There's a value to, like, popping in someplace, or like what we used to do at our gym, bring people over. Yeah. You know, like when I had fight camps, my brother would fly in 2 or 3 people, and I get a different look. You know, ideally someone who's similar to my opponent's frame or strategy. So okay, I get used to doing that. But you don't need to see it forever either, right? Like you need to be able to work with people that you can trust, and like you said, that there's there's a relationship there, so that you don't have to worry about getting yoked or whatnot during training. But to the MMA point, like my brother and I, we've been doing MMA training since '98, always with small gloves.
Yeah.
Don't have issues people getting knocked out or broken teeth because
no one's actually throwing. Yeah.
And there's a difference, right? Like when you do MMA sparring, it's not a fight, right? Like we know it's a level well below what our actual competition is. Man, for me, grappling is like that. Like my competition grappling is very different than my
training.
Though the type of energy I'm bringing in, like competition grappling, there's a lot more headbutting, there's a lot more cross facing going on, like stuff that you can't do in day-to-day training because you're gonna hurt people, so like, but you have to understand like your training is like a simulation. It's not the actual thing, right? Like it's hard to do the actual thing day in, day out without hurting people. Like I used to neck crank people all the time. Stop doing it because once I had students, I'm like, it's not cool to pop your students' necks all the time.
You're gonna lose a student.
And nobody wants, and even your training partners, nobody likes tapping to neck cranks. And I'm really good at them, but it's like I stopped doing them because like I can only hurt people so many times.
And if you hurt them, you're gonna lose a training partner too.
You break your, like I tell people, don't break your toys.
Yeah, break your toys.
Exactly. Then you have nobody to play with, Yeah. So there's a responsibility there as well.
It's selfish. It's altruistic and selfish at the same time. You manage to be both at the same time. I notice a lot of because there's a thing about cross training. Like this is something that, I'm two minds. I go back and forth on because on one hand, like, I just want to test myself against other people, and then I go because I've been leaning against it. Maybe because I'm a gym owner and that's influencing my psychology. I'm perfectly willing to admit that I'm on the different side of the fence now. So maybe that's why I changed. But people go like, I need a different feel and I just to test myself. I'm like, that's what competition is for. Yeah. I need new people to train with. I'm like, are you beating the people at your gym? No, because the only argument could be made is like if you're smoking everyone in the gym, you're no longer being challenged. And when I say smoking, I mean like you're not even breaking a sweat anymore. Not like I only tapped him once in 10 minutes. Like if you tapped him once in 10 minutes, he's a very good training partner for you. You're tapping him 8 times in 10 minutes. Like okay, you might need an upgrade. That's kind of how I look at things. But I think that a lot of it is not motivated by like I want to improve. It's motivated by it's a social club. It's just like hanging out. Like you're trying to see where you sit on the pecking order. So when you visit other gyms, they have these like Sunday open mats, like a very common, like everyone gets together. And I've seen some of them, they don't even train. They barely train. They're just talking, socializing. This person is scared of that person. It's like a very weird environment where it's supposed to be, it's all about jiu-jitsu, it's no politics, but it very quickly turns into like a social event. Because I think that's the real motivation is not so much improving. I think the real motivation is just socializing. People like the socialize for the same reason they go to nightclubs. Everyone gets dressed up to go to the nightclub to what? To see who's prettier than who's gonna pick up who's. It's like we're obsessed with that, man. Like we're always trying to see where we stand in the world, and I think there's a lot more of that going on. They're like, I really need to improve on myself. That's why I got to go over there, because again, there are exceptions. There is that one guy who's smoking everyone in the gym, and I think that's like I've left gyms before, Dave. I was like because I was beating everyone. Like I wouldn't have anyone to train with, so I had to move. Yeah. And I think that's a good reason if you're a professional athlete or you want to be, and you got to go for that reason. But like if it's something that like you just want to socialize, you might want to rethink what you're really doing.
I think you bring a good point as far as like, I guess like what would be your standard as far as like when you should shift teams or whatnot, because it would kind of be like you're shooting and maybe you're not doing that well. And then you know what? I'm just gonna buy an even more expensive gun.
Yeah.
Like
how about you? It's the gun.
It's a gun. Like maybe it's just you. Like maybe you have to train the fundamentals a little bit more.
Yeah, but people want the shortcut.
Yeah, but like, then if you're like bullseyeing or something like that, maybe I could do even better with it. There's a thing to be said that like even when we're talking about training and changing things up, right? Like athlete says, I want to do this. Maybe there's a value to what athletes saying like to expand his horizons, right? As a coach, there has to be, of course, a conversation. Like I don't want to give people the wrong impression, like like the coach is like a dictator and like everything he says goes. But generally, I feel the coach should be like the final say as far as what goes down, right? Because he's the guy with the most experience. If he's a good coach, right? Like I'm always one that, like I tell my guys, like I'd rather be coached by someone who's actually stepped in the cage before, right? Because they have that experience. They know how it feels like. It's not saying it's impossible to be a great coach and never fought in your life, right? is just unusual, right?
And
you're kind of speaking out of turn in the sense that since you've never done the thing yourself, you really don't know how it's like. Again, it's possible that you can be very attuned or empathetic and understand what it's like, but I would always, like, if you have the choice, Coach A and B are exactly the same, except A has fought like in 20 fights and B has never stepped in the cage before.
I'm more likely to trust
A, right?
Yeah,
because he's been in there, he can tell you, hey, when you're getting the butterflies in your stomach, this is what you need to do, or like.
It's something to do with the instruction too. When this guy tells me A, B, I don't question it. Like, I know he's done it. I know he's speaking from experience. But someone's never done it before and they're telling me to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I don't want to have that hesitation round 2, round 3.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be like thinking about what you're saying, if it's truthful or not. Like, you want to have someone who you really trust. And this is like, the psychology behind that is super interesting to me. Is the level of trust you're going to have in that person is even more important in the technique.
Yeah. Because
this is what allows so many guys that, in my opinion, don't know shit about fuck. They don't understand fighting. But they're brilliant psychologists. And there's the kind of guy that if they started a cult, they would kill it.
Yeah.
Like, they have that personality. Like, I've seen, like, I'm not going to mention, there's this one guy in Vegas, he's like a striking coach, and he always and he reminded me a lot. I'm not going to mention names here, but like, there's some people that in the community do this. Like, they have this domineering sort of like body language, right? And they get very good at. They talk to you like this. This is how they talk to you. You know what I'm talking about?
There's an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The alpha thing is to pick your chin up as high as you can.
Yeah, it's like you're looking down on them. It's very domineering, and it takes, like, I used to like fall for this stuff, and then I realized I started paying attention to what they were doing. I'm like, oh, it's a trick, like smoke and mirrors. This guy didn't know those shit about. Like, he's acting like he does, but he doesn't. It was like a light bulb moment when I realized this guy, it's body language. That's all it is. But they hold themselves in the tone of voice and how you say it. And there's something about, like, there's a huge loophole in human psychology where we go, well, this guy must be the real deal. He must know what he's talking about because he has so much confidence. So confidence is something you can achieve through wisdom and practice and experience, or it's something you can just train yourself or delude yourself, which would be even more efficient, because if you lie to yourself, well, you're going to be much better lying to other people. And then once you've mastered that, man, like, you're a step away from starting your own religion. Like, that's, I mean, some of these, I've like, there's this one strike.
No, I've seen
it's like the way he just held himself. Everyone's like, oh man, the guy's in the room. And I started paying attention to the guy. Man, this guy's stupid. He doesn't know striking. Like, he's just not, he's got no history. Like, why is everyone paying attention to what this guy is saying?
I've seen this before as well. And it is interesting because it's somebody who's never even fought before, doesn't even have a background in it. It's just like they had honey. They were just able to slip that in, and particularly to younger people who want that attention.
Yes.
It's like a fly to like, shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. People that are needy of father figures, not to go, Freudian on people here.
It's a big thing.
I'm not a huge fan of psychoanalysis, but there's something to be said about that father figure, man.
100%.
Like, I know many fighters who are badasses in the cage, and they're so needy of someone to look up to.
Yep.
Like, almost like little children inside.
No, I've said, like, in the martial arts community, period, most of the men fighting do not have a father figure in their life.
Yeah.
And it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And it's a lot because people go into the martial arts because why? They were insecure. They were getting bullied. They needed self-defense, something like that. And usually that happens because you didn't have a father figure that was guiding you.
Yeah.
Right? Because, a good dad's going to show you how to protect yourself and fight and stuff like that. And you're going to carry yourself a different way. But when you're kind of like a bird that fell out of the nest too early, you're vulnerable, And
you can be super tough.
And you could
still be vulnerable inside. It's a very different kind of toughness.
A lot of really tough guys that they're
inside. They're little. You know how many times I've seen these guys walk up to me and start crying? Yeah. Like, it happened. They broke out like Rob, and they did like just break down in front of me about their personal lives and shit. Yeah, man, it's interesting, man. Like the psychology behind all that. I think it was it Rogan that said that all fighters are either they just love like rad sports, like extreme sports, or they're angry at their dads. It's like one or the other. And it's like there might be some truth to that. Like some guys that if MMA didn't exist, they'd just be like, with those squirrel shoots, like jumping off the cliffs. You know, they'd be doing something like that. I know people are like that. Like
I know
some fighters, I'm convinced they just adrenaline junkies. They don't even like to train that much. It's just like the adrenaline of being in danger.
Man, I know guys who said they're going to do squirrel suits once they're done fighting. I'm like, yeah, you're not
okay. You're that category.
Yeah,
you fit into that category.
I'm like, you're not doing like you're not riding motorcycles. You're not doing anything extreme.
Just the most dangerous thing in the world.
Until your fight career is over. You know what I mean, like you don't do that stuff, man. I think that's an early grave, man. That squirrel suit stuff. It looks amazing.
It's amazing.
It looks freaking amazing. I watch it like, man, the rush must be incredible. I'm like, but that's like you do that 5-6 times, and one of the times it's just gonna become a skid.
I've seen statistically, there's like I can't remember the percentage, but like, it's a very big chance you're gonna die.
Yeah.
I saw this documentary once. There's this chick. She was married to one of these guys. He was like known for doing crazy stuff, and then sure enough, he died. And then right away, she married another one. It's like, what is wrong with you?
It's like a glutton for punishment, man.
Just want to be a widow. She's like,
Jesus, yeah. Squirrel suit stuff
I admire the courage, but it's almost like there's something wrong. I mean, I think like even fear. The way I look at like these features of psychology, it's just like you look at the body. Like my arms might be a little bit longer than yours. Yours might be a little bit hairier, but it's still an arm, right? I think fear is the same. Some people have more. Some people have less. We all have it. Some people just have very little of it. You know, I guess some of these guys, it's almost, it's something you think natural selection would have fixed a long time ago, because people with that sort of fearlessness should not have made it this far. You know, that gene should not have made it very far. But like some of these guys are just absolutely, I've seen guys, they're not scared of fighting. You know, I was shitting my pants every single time I step in that cage. Like I would like hope to get injured the week before. That's how scared I was. Like,
it's funny.
I hope I get injured just so I don't have to fight. That's how scared I was. You know, other guys are just like completely fine, man. It's unbelievable.
I've teetered between the two, but usually not as scared. You know, like even for like, I mean, to me, grappling's not scary. You know,
you get anxious.
You get anxious.
Nervous, but it's not scary. Yeah.
But because you're not worried about. Well, yeah, you can get hurt. I've been hurt more grappling than wrestling.
But there's something about a cage and punches that makes it scary.
There's definitely more. But like even for cage fights and stuff, I never really had too much nerves. Like the only one that I felt a little bit nervous was my first shoot fight and my first pro MMA fight. Yeah. Those two that had like the first MMA fight had tunnel vision where like I literally could only see like this. It was weird. You know, like I was so limited in my vision. I don't know why. But that fight went well, and then after that, never had issues. But some people I've known that were like UFC fighters throwing up before every fight. You know, dude, it's just from the nerves.
Successful ones too, guys that you think would never. Like if I told you who, maybe afterwards I'll tell you. Like there's no way this guy's scared to fight. I'm like, this guy is vomiting, and he's peeing every other minute.
Yeah,
he's that nervous. And you know, but if you see him in there, like they're just poker faced the whole time.
Yeah,
you know,
like we said, like GSP is pretty open about it. He's pretty anxious and nervous and terrified, and just like one of the
should be. Yeah,
he's like one of the greatest that's ever walked the earth. You know, so. I think it's a very motivating message for people because a lot of people think that being scared, they're weak or like there's something wrong with them. Like, no, you're normal. Like you're supposed to be scared. This is a very unusual thing to do. Like all of human history and animal history, there's very rare where like two people are going to plan to fight each other, you know, like 3 months in advance and step into a cage where everybody's watching them. That doesn't really happen. You know, fights are generally spontaneous. If you look in the wild, two males and they're in the same territory, we're throwing down. I mean, there wasn't months of build up for this, right? So like that whole time factor, it creates a lot more anxiety. Like people don't usually get as scared for a street fight because it just happens so quickly.
It's impulse.
Yeah. Like someone bumps you, hey, what's that? Oh, okay, boom. And we start throwing. Like there wasn't chance for a build up. You know what I mean?
It's one thing is like you're gonna fight tomorrow at 7 p.m. That's why school was so terrifying.
Oh,
yeah. Like, you're going to have to fight the guy in recess or something. The next hour, you're just like, you know.
Yeah, you're just biting your nails.
Anxiety just consuming you. Because it's very different. Because now there's no impulse. There's no, you know, it's that.
And you have that, again, everybody has that little voice that's like, we need to get out of this. Like, how can we? Like you said, like, it's funny, like the whole injury thing, people are like, oh, that's not true. No, that's true, man. There's people, like, and some people actually go a step further and they self-sabotage without even realizing it consciously. They'll do something that will take them out of the fight.
So it's a way out.
Yeah, it's a way out. Like people want to get, like there's a part of them that wants to get out.
Yeah.
And acknowledging it is important. because then you can control it.
Yeah. And you can start approaching the problem.
Yeah. If you pretend it doesn't exist, it can manifest itself in ways. And that happens in the fight where sometimes people just chin starts getting really high for some reason, like, and they're back mounted. You know, the guy's looking for a choke. He's like, oh, and then they tap, and he's like, oh, you know, he just got me. He's like, no, you got yourself out.
Yeah, you're boycotting. You just wanted a way out, a quick way out.
And it happens even in wrestling. People pin themselves, like in
just to get out of the
match, you know. And they don't. It's like a subconscious thing going on, you know, most of the time. So it's important to acknowledge that there's a part of you that's scared, and that's okay. And then you just have to be able to work around that.
That's the survival guy, though. Like you don't want to get rid of like it's always interesting when people like you have all these like what we would call like negative forces in your psychology, or like things like fear, anxiety, anger, like hate, whatever. You think, oh, this is all bad. Get rid of it. I'm like, no, that's shit. It's whether you like it or not, it's there.
Yeah.
Now the only question is, what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
Because like fear is something that's kept you alive. It's something that you're neglecting your past, and you're trying to like, oh no, I don't want these things. Kept you alive, man. This is part of who you are.
Yeah.
They're good things. You just have to learn how to manage them. You have to learn how to use them to your favor.
Exactly.
Like fear is good. Anxiety is. I think anxiety is a huge drive.
Yeah.
I'm especially anxiety over the future. Like I think of the past, you can just dwell on it. You can only learn from the past. That's how I look at it. The future is something that you shouldn't be anxious about. I mean, you will be anxious about, but you have to use that as motivation, man. Like it's not as like, oh, I'm scared of the future. Oh, like, oh, I got to prepare for the future. It's like positive. Yes. It's not negative. The
anxiety is energy, right? So it's like it's trying to motivate you to do something, right? Either to prepare or to get the hell out of it, right? Like, it's one or the other, So like when you have nervous energy for a fight, it's either trying to tell you, hey, I don't want to do this. Let's get out of here. And that fear element is because we can get hurt, right? But if you use that energy and that fear to prepare yourself, then you're like essentially telling your body, I know there's a risk, but I'm going to prepare for it the best I can because there's a really big reward, and I'm willing to take that risk. And when you do the right prep, you feel good about it, and a lot of that fear subsides. There's always a little bit, but a lot of it goes away. And I always tell people, it's always been true for me, as you walk into the cage, all that shit starts to just slip away. And by the time you're in there, it's go time. You're in the zone. All that stuff that you were worried about no longer applies. But it's kind of like you have to have faith in the process.
Yeah.
The body is going to try to, or the part of your mind that's trying to preserve your health is going to try to do everything it can to convince you to not step in there.
Yeah.
But once you're in and knows the game's up, it's okay. Let's just.
It's pure emotion.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just get all in now. Now this is our only hope. We got to do really good now.
You got to tell your emotion. It's almost like the little voice in your head, like it's going to be okay. And even though there's some danger, a die in MMA or something horrific happening, but that's normally. Let's be frank. It's not the most. Squirrel suits are a lot more dangerous anyway.
I think motorcycles are a lot more dangerous.
I think a lot of things. Yeah, motorcycles, like not even like the motocross. Like we're talking just driving on
around
the freeway. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think football probably has like worse injuries than MMA. I'm not sure.
I think they take a lot more beatings.
What number is, but
just like. Yeah, I think you're out of time, right?
Yeah, that's my alarm to pick up my kid. But anyway, like we could pick up on which one is the most dangerous sport on the planet. I'm going with squirrel suits. That's my vote.
I think squirrel suits are a pretty good bet.
I think jiu-jitsu is pretty safe in comparison. I'll stick to that for whatever the extent of my training life, however long that goes on for. I'm trying to like manage whatever life I have in my joints for the next like 20, 30 years.
Well, I've been telling people as you get older, you have to study. They call it MRV in weightlifting world. It's called maximum recoverable volume, right? And essentially, as you get older, you get less and less volume that you can put in, right? So that's like something that I'm trying to learn myself still about, like how much I can lift versus how much I can do jiu-jitsu, how much I can do the archery, and how much I can run. Like you can only fit in so much, so you got to figure out what that is, and it's going to change as you get older. You get less. So, okay, I got to lower that amount of volume I could put in, because otherwise you start wearing out. Like for me now, I know like if I train 2 days in a row hard, I'm broken.
Yeah.
Like I can't do it. So like I have to do like 1 day hard. Okay, then another day I could do easy. You know what I mean? Or just technique.
I do 3 hard rounds when I go hard. 3 like hard rounds. As far as I'll stop mid-train if I have to. And there can be easy ones, and I don't go to war all the time. Maybe like once or twice a week. You have to, man, because I want to train till I'm 60, 70.
Yeah.
And I got arthritis. I'm 39 and I got arthritis on my knees, and I suspect on my hands too. So Anyway, brother, I gotta go.
Yep.
I gotta pick up the kiddos. It was a lot of fun. Always good to pick up. And I'll be back in 5-6 days.
Okay.
We'll do another one. Thank you guys for listening. Stay awesome, and We'll see you guys soon.